friend, and welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Pot-cast by Blue Nose Trading. I'm your host, Tori Solis, and today I'm going to be talking with Mike Hennigan of Redtail Pottery. Today we talked about ovals, progression, growth, and development of style through time, feet, crisp versus organic work, collecting trees, commissions, and mugs. This was a really excellent chat today. I hope y'all enjoy. Hey Mike, thank you for joining me today. How did you get started in ceramics, just off the bat? Like, how'd you get your hands in the dirt?
I had taken, when I was a kid, I took some ceramics class, and then, in high school, I took a ceramics class, but I never really just made a few pots. But it wasn't really until, 5 years ago, I decided to take, a beginner's pottery course. It's, a 6-week long thing at a local pottery studio here in Ithaca, New York. I was like, oh, that'd be cool if I could make some bonsai pots for my own trees, just kind of playing around with it. And then I became completely obsessed and made so many that I was like, oh, what if I start selling these? And so that's kind of where that started.
Yeah, I understand. Eventually you end up with a pile of them and you're like, I couldn't realistically take care of this many trees. What do I do with all this stuff?
Yeah, for sure.
So when you got it started in selling, how did you get started in selling? Where did you start?
Really, how I started was, I made an Instagram page, and so I was kind of promoting my work on Instagram for a while. And then I made a website using Squarespace that I could sell my pots through. And so I basically just started by selling through my website, and I was able to get people to my website through my Instagram, really.
Nice.
And I think I sold 26 pots in the first hour of my
That's awesome.
first posting on my website. So I was really taken aback, honestly. I was like, oh wow, people really seem to appreciate what I'm doing.
It's amazing work. It's super clean, but in general, I'll let you say it. So how would you describe your style?
Well, I've heard a lot of people say my pots look clean, straight lines. I feel like I have a little bit of an obsessive thing, so it's really hard for me to if a pot is wonky at all, or it's not perfectly symmetrical, which honestly they never are, but it can really drive me crazy if there's a line that's not if I do a inset line across the rim or something and a little wiggly or uneven, it just drives me nuts.
Straight to the reclaim bucket.
Usually I'll just end up making it, or I'll try to fix it as best I can.
Yeah.
I usually only smash pots if there's something really wrong with it, it's drying and something's starting to crack, and it's just not gonna be a good pot. Lately, I've been making so when I first started out, I was just making round pots. I did take a hand building class when I first started out, so I did make a few things besides round pots. I just was okay, let's just get really good at making a round pot. So I just made tons and tons of round pots. And that can get pretty boring after a while, because there's so many other shapes of pots that, are in the bonsai world that you can explore. I tend to really hone in on a shape. So the last year, I made ovals before the last year, but the last year I've made a ton of ovals, more than anything else. It's funny, I just stopped making round pots. I just didn't want to make round pots anymore. I'm sure I'll make some in the future, but so when I vended at the national show a month ago or whatever, my tables were mostly ovals with a few rectangles and stuff scattered in. But I just wanted to get as good as I could at making that shape. So that's what I just kind of focused on the most probably over the last year. And I guess my stuff kind of looks somewhat, most of my ovals are somewhat traditional looking, I have made pots that are outside of traditional looking, and honestly would like to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
This past year I had 3 shows that I did. I did the PBA festival in Washington DC in the spring. I did the Bonsai Society of Upstate New York club show, which is a club in Rochester that puts on the national show.
Nice.
And that was in the spring. And then I did the national show in September. And I feel because I had all these shows kind of lined up, my focus was kind of more on producing pots.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I know how to make an oval, I know how to make a round, whatever, and I know how to make, some rectangles. So, but like I just made like tons of ovals, and that way I could like have a lot of pots for these shows.
Yeah.
And while I think like by being in that kind of production like mindset, I feel like the quality of my work has really improved.
Yeah.
But it can stifle creativity a little bit when you're just like, oh, I gotta make pots.
Yeah.
It's not like you're not necessarily like taking the time to explore new forms and stuff that might take longer to learn. So that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like after this kind of year of shows, I'm kind of looking forward to doing more like exploring in terms of what other forms would be part of my style, or kind of even just discovering more of like what is my style.
Yeah.
Outside of just like a nice looking rectangular oval or whatever. Kind of going on and on here.
Oh, you're fine. I'm listening. It's interesting for sure. So, you were inspired a lot by the traditional forms, and so much there. And ovals are so hard. Man, what to talk about first? I guess let's start with ovals. How do you make a good oval? Because well, not everybody, but a lot of us are out here struggling. I'm one of those people out here struggling with these ovals. They I throw my walls and I'm encountering like it warps like in the firing, like it's bowing. And I heard it was from me throwing the walls. What do I need to do to make my clay not, if you've encountered this or not, but like when it bows.
Yeah, so anytime you like so I throw my walls when I make ovals, right?
Yeah.
Throw without a bottom. So I just put that wall of clay with no bottom. And then that way I can take that wall and I can easily distort it into an oval shape. But when you throw a wall like that in a circle, if the wall is straight up and then you take it and shape it in an oval, there's no distortion that's going to happen because you only have that one like vertical plane. If your oval is, instead of like being up and down, if your oval is like out like this, like when you throw it,
at an angle,
and then you shape it into an oval, usually what's going to happen is sort of front and the back of the pot will kind of push out more, and then the sides will maybe pull up a little.
Yeah.
And then if you have like a curve like this, that's even more going on. So like when you take that circular shape and you make it oval, unless it's just straight up and down, you're gonna distort how the wall is shaped in different parts of the pot. So what you kind of have to do is use your hands to kind of stretch the clay. Like I'll usually, on the front and the back side, I will usually kind of stretch the bottom of the wall out. Usually it proceeds sort of inward.
Yeah.
You could use like a rib to help you do that. So there is a little bit of like manipulating that form once you get it in the oval shape.
Yeah, for sure.
Before you attach it to the slab. I'll say like for me, the other really difficult thing about ovals was like, where do I put my feet?
Yeah, and the sagging sometimes in the bottom.
Yeah, I'll talk about that too for sure. Like with the feet thing, like I don't think people, like the general bonsai population, realizes how complicated ovals are, because there's no like, when you have an oval shape, there's no like right angle telling you like where your foot should. It becomes quite complicated. Kind of how I try to keep track of all that. The bats that I throw the walls on, I have like a big X and like Sharpie on that bat, so that's like a right angle right there.
Yeah.
Then I can mark the walls before I take it off the bat and shape it into an oval. I can do like a mark like 1 quarter, 1 quarter, 1 quarter, 1 quarter. And then that way, I attach it to a slab and I have those marks. I can mark those onto the slab. And then I can see exactly where each quarter of the pot is.
Yeah.
And you can use those as references to it. Because if you're just like eyeing it, if you're just trying to put a foot on an oval with your eyes, like they're going to end up like kind of one's off this way. And it's really difficult to do. Oh, and then like the sagging thing, like if you have, obviously if you have this big, wide, flat bottom form, right, with the slab, when you fire it, it's gonna want to sag. So what I do is I'll put a piece of clay underneath the pot that stay with it during firing that are the same height.
Do you keep those through the glaze firing too?
Yeah. Yeah, because like the glaze firing is like when it's gonna warp the most.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Pots don't have to warp that much in this firing, but I keep them there for both firings.
Yeah, so they shrink and all that the same.
Yeah, that way those pieces, you know, they just pop right off when you're done, but it'll support the bottom sagging too much.
Yeah. Some like wood glue might be a good thing too, just to keep all of them in track between your glaze and your bisque. Like just gluing them to the bottom, it would burn off in the firing. Then you would.
Oh yeah, I always just kind of like keep them like in the pot until I need a little bit kill, and I'll just kind of stick them where I'll kind of hide out and then put my pot over them. But if you want to get them like in more exact places, I feel like that would probably work. Maybe I'll try doing that.
Yeah, you sound like you like the exactitude. We used to glue the, in one of my college ceramics classes, we had to glue our pieces to a cookie every time. Like, so you always had to put wood glue on the foot and stick it to a cookie no matter what, because it was a learning, you know, setting. So they were like, we don't trust your glazing, ever.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
One of my new shelves every 2 months or whatever.
Are you getting advancers, or are you doing just the regular ones?
I have advanced shelves.
Nice. I've got one. It's my mess around and find out shelf.
Oh, that's nice.
Just one. Do I need a baby one?
It's a great idea, actually, just having one, because that way, like, if you have a glaze that you're not sure about, or whatever, you can stick that pot on that shelf. Honestly, advancers have been super, super helpful for me, because a year ago, or a little over a year ago, I decided that, well, so, like, I was working out of this community studio in Ithaca, and basically they had, like, all these glazes that were provided, right? You just pay membership and you can use the glazes. But when I decided to set up my own studio at our home, like in my basement, I decided that instead of trying to buy all those glazes I have been using, which were all like commercial glazes, I decided to mix my own glazes. So I mixed a whole bunch of glazes, I did a whole bunch of testing. If I had regular kiln shells when I was figuring out these glazes that I was mixing, like, it would have been a disaster because I had so much glaze running off onto the shelves. And with the advancer, like, you know, it just picks right off.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have to, like, go grind the shelf, like, to get all the glaze off and all that stuff.
They are a lifesaver.
They're expensive, but they save me a lot of, and, like, just, I still have glazes that kind of run sometimes, kind of getting better at, you know, figuring out how thick they should go on, and just trying to get things so they don't run too much. But every now and then you have a pot that runs. Instead of smashing that pot and losing that sale, I can just pop it right off the shelf and just, you know, grind down the glaze a little bit, and it's a perfectly good pot.
Yeah, I do that too. I have like a diamond sanding pad on a bat, and just put it on the wheel. Sand it that way, wet sand it that way. I'm not wild. I'm not dry sanded over here.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually bought one of those. I haven't used it yet.
Oh, the sanding pad? Well, it sounds like you just haven't messed up recently. You'll use it when you need to get to it.
Sometimes I have like the little diamond like handheld pads.
I love those. Yeah.
They're good for like, you know, for getting like the edge of the feet instead of like being at the bottom or whatever. Those are good.
Those are sweet. I use those on every single mug. Like, it's just part of my mug process. Like, I sand the bottom of everything with wet diamond pad so that they're, like, nice and soft for your grandma's table.
Yeah.
So, where do you find the inspiration for your work? I saw you grow up in the forest, and...
I spend every summer, like, on Skinny Atlas Lake, which is one of the Finger Lakes upstate New York. That's actually where, like, the name of my company comes from.
Oh, sweet.
The name of that little gravel road is Red Tail Lane, so that's where Red Tail Pottery comes from. I feel like when I was first kind of getting more interested in bonsai pottery, I was really amazed by like Tom Mendo's work. Familiar
Yes.
Obviously, if you look at my pots, it's not like I'm doing anything really like top end of, but I definitely aspire to branch out more from what I have been doing to try more complex designs or more unique designs. I like the idea of like finding the line between like making a pot complex or unique,
Mm.
but it still being like subtle enough that someone would want to use it for a treat. Because you could go like really crazy with the design, and like maybe like out of every 500 person would use that pot. Which I think those pots are still cool, but like, what is like the line of like what can I get away with in terms of like design?
Yeah, but still reach that traditional market, or maybe aiming for that truly American bonsai potter kind of market, like that up there with Sarah Rayner and Ron Lang type of thing, that true American. But in your own style, you're not going to be them. You're going to be you.
As something I've just thought of, like that line, and honestly, like that line of like being innovative,
Mm-hmm.
meeting subtlety or usability. It's different for every person doing bonsai. Right? It's like different, different. Like the bonsai and bonsai pots are so subjective to me.
Yep.
I don't really subscribe to the idea that like every bonsai needs to be like very classically Japanese. Somebody that I actually love their pots is like Thor Hovilla, and I bring him up because when I was first getting into making bonsai pots like 5 years ago, I like really did not like his pots. They were just too like organic. They seemed sort of disorganized, or sometimes they'll have like a really bright color with like I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I feel like the more that I do pottery, the more I actually love his pots because I'm like I can see that like somebody made those pots. Like
Yeah.
you can see that those pots are made by hand and are actually very thoughtful. So like my tastes have evolved a little bit. And honestly, I would like to I know my work is very like straight lines.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff is like pretty subtle or whatever. But I would like to work on including more of like more organic stuff into my work because it can get a little boring just having everything just like trying to make everything perfect all the time. And the more I make pottery, pots that I start liking more and more are ones that are like imperfectly perfect.
Yeah.
Like it is a perfect pot because it's like, and you said you make sort of more organic pot.
Well, I just like when you were talking about oval feet and you're like, I measure them exactly. I'm like, man, I just flip it over and I'm like, where's the vibe? Boop, right there. It's got feet. And then I flip it back over and I push them down to make sure they're secure and I look at it from low and I'm like, all right, it's level, we're good. Like, so I'm really like more of an intuitive, like maybe like right-brained kind of working. And it sounds like you're more of a mechanically minded. You just kind of process things in your process a little bit differently. There's a lot more control. Well, I guess we both have control, because I think that you do need to have control of your craft, so that you can make choices instead of just being blown around by the clay. Like, I'm a firm believer in that you need to know how clay works, so that you're not passing off bad work as just whatever. Like, if there's 5 pounds of clay at the bottom and you didn't intend for this to be planted with a cascade, there's a little craft that could be worked on there. I've been thinking about these concepts of just like people having their own cultural filters for their work too. Like, I like really loud, colorful, speckled clays, but when I think about like where I'm picking up the influence for the style and the kind of stuff that I'm trying to do, like I live in Texas, so like the art around me is very loud and different down here. So I kind of think of my work as having a little bit of that obnoxious flair that just is, signature to Dallas. So it's a little bit like that. So when I look at my work, I'm like, yeah, but I do want it just gotta be functional, and like I take care of my drain holes. I make sure I want my weight to be good, and there's lots of things that are considered. But also, I guess when I'm a fan of the bag shape a lot, so that shape has its own issues sometimes. But I just love them.
Yeah, I love the bag shaped pots too. It's just that some people, when you have that like really
they're like, I can't get it out of here.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, there's other pots on the website. You could go get a straight one.
Yeah, it's not meant for every tree, that's for sure, and
Yeah.
you gotta be willing to cut some things off or
Yeah.
pot it or whatever. Like what you were saying about how, like, when you put oval feet on, you're just kind of eyeing it and you're going by that intuitive. You know, there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just a different way of doing it. And, you know, I actually bought a pot from another potter at the National Rectangle. His name is Josh Barham. I don't know if you great guy. I just love this little rectangle, and the feet on it are really nice. But you look at them, and they're not like sort of perfectly symmetrical feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it works. Like they look really nice, and I'm like, I kind of wish that I had more of that element in my own work. And it's funny because like when I see pots that have more of that asymmetrical, or I don't know if wabi-sabi is the right word for it, but I kind of like seeing that in other people's work. And then other people will be like, oh, I love your pots because they're so like clean and crisp or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
like I tend to like stuff that I don't even make. You know, like styles of pots that I don't even really make myself, which I find kind of interesting.
I think it's kind of like if you have straight hair, you want curly hair you want straight, and because I also like I don't know how everyone works, but I know when I look at work like yours that's super clean and crisp, I'm like, man, I think that's what my work should look like. I'm like, I should be making clean and crisp pots. And then I look at my work and I'm like, but meh. I like what I'm doing, but like there's a part of me that says, oh, your work should be clean and crisp, like, and you know, it's like a duality there for me too. With the organic work, it's like, well, I want it to look organic, but I feel like people expect it to look clean and crisp all the time, so like I feel like sometimes a little on the defense of my weird feet. Like, yeah, I know they're not perfect, but like I like them like that. I'm not perfect either.
Yeah, but there's like a certain, like, that's an aesthetic in itself.
I see the whole thing where I think, you know, you're just like, man, I should be a little more free, and I'm like, I need to be cleaner.
Yeah, well, I know. Yeah, honestly, clean and crisp can be exhausting sometimes because it's like you get a little tired of like, oh, I gotta make everything just like.
I think you're ready for your non-bond era.
Yeah, I made a few actually as I made like a few sort of like textured non-bonds.
Yeah, nice. Those are good. Is that oxide?
Yeah, it's just like iron oxide on over bare clay.
Nice.
But it's funny, like when I was making these, I felt like I was making someone else's pot. I feel like something that I normally make, but I like doing it. I don't know. Sometimes it's important to just like try something that you don't normally do, just to kind of see how you feel about it.
Yeah. I don't know if you're into reading books, but there's a book by Rick Rubin called The Creative Act. It's super good. It's like, he's like a music producer, but the way he just talks about creativity in general I thought it was super helpful. So now I think about that a lot. Like, I look at it and I'm like, he's like, think about the rules and then think about like, what would happen if you just didn't follow them, just as an experiment, you know? So I made one pot the other day with feet, and I always think of my feet intuitively to be a certain size. And I was like, what if they were too big? And then I made them way too big, and I hated it. But that's the kind of experiment that like that kind of pushing, like you think, okay, they can't be bigger than that. So then I look at that rule and go, okay, well on this one, just this one, they're going to be bigger than that, you know. Or you say, oh well, it can't be this, and so just for one pot, make it that, and just see, you know, like what happens if you just break that like one thing where you look at it and go, it can't be this. So then make it that just to see. And usually it's like, sometimes I come out and I'm like, yeah, that's why we don't do that.
Yeah, it's breaking like patterns that you have in your own work. Actually, I have that book. I read about like halfway through it, and
Nice.
It's been a while since I picked it up, so I gotta pick it up and try to finish it.
It's a good one. I really liked it.
Yeah, what you said about feet is interesting because like I feel like over the last year I've been going back and forth about like how tall should my feet be for a certain pot. And I feel like if you look at like, do you know the Japanese potter Gyozan?
I've probably seen it, but I can't think of it off the top of my head what their work looks like.
Look him up.
I'm gonna mute while I type.
Yeah, Gyozan. I mean, his pots are amazing. He's probably the most sought after living Japanese bonsai potter today. But I noticed a lot of his pots, he tends to do taller feet.
Yeah, these are a lot taller than what I normally see.
And then if you look at maybe Sarah Rayner pots,
yeah, I've seen hers for sure.
Short, she does pretty short, and so there's not. It made me think a little bit because it's there's not necessarily a wrong foot size within a certain range. And some of that's just the style of the potter. It almost seems on a fair amount of Japanese pots, they put taller feet, whereas a lot of them, maybe Americans making a similar style of pot, might put a shorter foot.
I mean, I think it's just you're right. It's a style and an aesthetic choice. I know that I sometimes don't add feet as separate entities at all. I will trim a deep foot ring in and then carve 2 holes out for the water to run, and then I'll run the drainage holes. And I figure as long as the water can run out and there's room underneath for wire to come up, that it's functional. So sometimes I don't have any feet at all. I just have a carved in area underneath the pot for wires and drainage.
Yeah, I've seen that. A lot of times, when I was making more round pots, I would just leave extra thick amount of clay on the bottom just so I could trim out the feet and not have to worry about attaching feet. And then just do little cutouts, take a hole cutter and just do a little semicircle cutout.
I like to roll slab feet, just a quick roll, not not slabs, coil feet. It's just a quick roll. I'll grab the clay that was holding it down while I was trimming it, and then I'll just roll that out and cut 3 slices off, and then round them out with my thumbs and a sponge on the edge, and that's the feet now.
I love that.
Right there.
So it's so funny because how I usually will make feet for a lot of my pots is I'll extrude them.
Okay.
I'll usually take a square extruder die. I'm just doing a sort of generic foot for a whole potter, and then I'll cut them to exactly the length I want, and it's just interesting how different your approach is than mine. Just so controlled. It's kind of annoying. It also annoys me how controlled I am about you do the extruder, you get the perfectly even amount of clay coming through, right? Whereas if you do a coil with your hand, it could be pretty good, but it's going to be maybe a little variable.
They're always a little bit different. In the bottom, they're always just, they're the same height because I squish them to the same height and look from the bottom, but when I do that squish, sometimes they'll be a little different sized in places and, squished more or less, but I like it. It's nice and organic.
Yeah, I've done a similar thing before where I did on a round pot, I did feet with I just rolled little balls of clay.
Yep.
And then I do three feet out of the balls of clay, where I just squish the balls onto the pot, and then you end up with this kind of cool looking little ball.
Oh yeah, I feel like I do those all the time.
Oh yeah.
Just like that. Little feet balls.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah.
I don't know if I have one over here that's got the other style. This is that carved in.
Okay, yeah.
So there's space for the wire, but it's from the side, it's only lifted.
Yeah.
So it's not
that functions perfectly fine. You got space with the wire.
Yep.
And I just did a coil for just a ring of clay. I didn't leave enough clay to trim. And then I just have one cutout on one side. But then the rest of the pot is completely. But that's the whole aesthetic in itself, is just having a non-bond that's up on tall feet isn't really a non-bond, right? I don't know if this is even really non-bond or just my version.
Oh yeah. We're just using the words to describe things the best we can. I think that when I think about the words, sometimes it does feel kind of well, this is describing a very specific thing that I'm not necessarily showing right now. But also, we don't have words in our language to describe what we're doing anyway. So we're like saying it's like a non-bond, but, and then we describe how we've made it kind of different. There's like an acknowledgement there that like this might be something a little bit different, but like English doesn't have a word for what this is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because like a real non-bond is like it's just some like clay lid from a jar or something that someone like in Japan just grill the whole food instead. You know, they weren't even made to be bonsai pots. So like the fact that I'm even making something that's supposed to be a bonsai pot and calling it a non-bond is kind of like not really. But like that's the word we have for that style.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of what we have to use.
It's like when we go collect material. Like I got to collect material with my club this past spring, and like we just went to the city park and collected material there. We had permission, of course. And it's like, so is this Yamadori? Because I live in the Blackland Prairie, and I'm in the city park of Dallas, digging up trees. I don't think this is Mountain Yamadori, but I don't know what to call it. So, collected material, urban Yardadori.
Yeah, because like a lot of stuff that I collect around here is like out of like farm fields, like cow pastures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, it's not from a mountaintop. It's something that some cow has been tripping over.
Right.
And chewing on for a few years. Maybe like field authorities.
Right. Farmadori.
I always like the term yardadori.
I do too. That's funny. And but like all these trees are under a different kind of stress though. Like cows chopping at them trees, like that's a definitely creates that stunted, stressed, aged look in the tree. And then like at the city park, I saw a lot of stuff where people just like create these they just trample things. Like so there was a lot of like stressed out little trees there with some really cool trunks to, you know, collect. At least I think of Yamadori as trees that have been through it. When I think of like the traditional ones even.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, like around here it's like, you know, we don't have like Rocky Mountains. Like the closest thing to like sort of mountain Yamadori in America that we have here is like would be like in the Catskills, which is too far from here. But like there's a lot of amazing dwarf pitch pine up on the tops of some of those mountains. But the only thing with that is that all those are like completely protected. No way you could.
Yeah.
There might be a couple spots around where people could collect, but that stuff is like totally off limits. So for me, like, I really love deciduous trees, and so what I find the best material around here for collecting is usually like some animal did something to the tree at some point instead of like wind or whatever, you know. So it's like cow pastures, or a lot of times forests that are next to like beaver ponds. You can find some interesting like American hornbeams and stuff. They've already been chopped down by beavers and regrown and maybe chopped again. So finding trees that animals like chewing on.
I really love the idea that like we just all have whatever is happening to the trees in our environment that's causing them to have the stunted like it's in the case of like the mountains, it's the wind, right, and the lack of nutrition maybe, or space or something. And then where you're at, it's the animals that are affecting trees. And then I live in the urban sprawl, so for the most part, it's people and like what we're doing, like, you know, when something's up against a sidewalk. Like, I don't know. I know these aren't supposed to be good-looking trees, but like it's the reality of where I live. So when I'm looking at stuff, if I'm not out into a state park, I see a lot of this, like these trees that have just been so drastically affected by being in close proximity to people. And then I think about this concept of us as a force on these trees, just as negative or at least as impactful as the wind or drought or anything like that. I haven't like moved forward with this concept. It's just something that I think about a lot when I'm looking at trees. So I haven't decided how to translate that into bonsai, because I'm still learning horticulture and basically how to tree. I'm pretty good at pottery, but I'm still learning how to tree. But I've been looking and observing, and I listen to people's thoughts on trees, and I've got some ideas for concepts that throughout my life I'd like to flush out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm still learning how to tree. I've been doing bonsai for like 10 years or so. feel like I'm like just getting a handle on. You know, it took a while just to figure out how to keep everything healthy. It's a big learning.
Yes, it's a lot. And I'm at the point where I've got a bunch of these. I bought a bunch of trees that aren't really going to ever be anything, that I'm just kind of seeing what will live here. And then I've collected some stuff that I've had for a year, so I still have probably a couple years on that collected material before I start doing anything with it. And I'm going to keep collecting with my club as often as those opportunities arise, and hopefully build up a collection of work that throughout my life I can be comfortable with and work out my ideas on as well.
What kind of species have you collected?
Well, I bought ficus, the one that you get from Home Depot. That's I've got one of those. Can't get rid of it because it's we're homies. I got a Brazilian rain tree from a chop shop. It's just a stick and pot, and I've had that one for a long time, like 4 years now. And I like a Brazilian rain trees a lot. I think that I want to get a real one, like one that has actual potential. It's a species I think I'd like to pursue. And then for my collected material, I have privet. It's a Chinese privet. It was collected, but it was invasive. And I have several mimosas, which they aren't very long-lived, but they're fast-growing, so I like to play with them and see what I can do with them a little bit. And I have some American elms that seem like they're doing pretty good. I forget. Texas ash. But I don't know if either of my Texas ash made it. They either clocked out for an early dormancy this summer and they're going to come back next spring, or they're dunsies. So we'll just see.
Oh, that's cool. I'm not familiar with Texas. We have ash around here, but they're all getting like completely destroyed by the emerald ash borers. Unfortunately.
That is unfortunate.
We have some woods like behind our house, and there's some ash trees in there that are just dead.
Oh, it's still hard to watch.
I actually wondered about, so does the Texas ash, does that have like a compound leaf on it?
I am not intelligent or educated enough to answer that question. I don't know yet. Mine are really sad. They only kind of made one branch when they came out this spring, and then when the summer hit, it got really hot, and I think that they both dropped the leaves that they had, and I think they might have died. But I haven't caught, I'm still watering them, and I haven't wrote them off yet, but we'll see. But we're working on learning more about the trees. I haven't dove too deep into them yet, because I was just like, let's just see if we can first aid you guys back. You've been in trees forever. Do you ever make a tree or a pot to fit a tree, specifically? If you have a tree and you're like, oh, I need to make it this kind of pot, do you make that pot?
I have not done that for myself. I'm going to. I've done a few commissions for other people for they had a specific tree that they wanted a pot for. But yeah, it's funny, I feel like a lot of the pots of mine that I have are like something was wrong with them, or I just didn't like them enough to sell them. Or there's a big crack in the bottom, but it's not enough of a crack that it can't be used. So I'll just keep pots like that on hand, in case I have a tree that'll fit in it.
I do the same thing.
Yeah. I have some trees that are starting to kind of look nicer though, and I would like to. I was thinking about this winter maybe making a few pots for some of my trees, so we'll see. Oh, and I'll say about commissions for other people's trees. I take them every now and then, but it's definitely one of those things where you might get a lot of requests for commissions. They can be really rewarding, but it's also it's kind of a headache. So I enjoy doing it for certain people or whatever in certain situations. But sometimes taking a bunch of commission work, it can really throw off the rhythm that you have of making what you're normally making.
I absolutely agree.
So anyone who's potter out there who's thinking about taking commissions, just take one at a time. Just be careful about overloading yourself with that kind of work, because it can really be a headache if you get too many going at once.
I absolutely agree. I'm with you 100%. Well, I don't do them hardly at all. I just have a general no policy overall on commissions, and the reason for me is because, like, I'm running a pottery studio on top of, like, you know, my bonsai pottery studio, and I feel like I have to make a commission twice just in case something happens to one. And then, like, then I have two, and it's, you know, it's a bonsai pot. Usually it's going to be huge, so it's, like, going to take up a whole kiln shelf. I only have a Scott 822. You know, it's a 22-inch kiln, so, like, that's a whole shelf for me. And it's two shelves, you know, if I'm doing a commission. So now I'm losing, like, two shelves and a firing, and, like, I have to make this thing, and it's going to take up all this space, and, like, I'm also trying to, like, make mugs for the masses. And, like, so for me, it just stresses me out. And then also, I just, like, I overdo myself in my head mentally about people's expectations. And, like, inner me and my inner critic will be like, they're going to hate it. They're going to hate it. Plus, like, I work so organically that I don't want people to look at an organic piece and be like, oh, did you, you know, like, there's just that, like, is this good enough or should it be clean and sharp, like, you know, like, more like your work. So it's just a lot. Too much energy for me to take commissions. So, but it's good that you have good boundaries on your commissions. That sounds really good, too.
No, I mean, I would say that I'm, like, kind of mostly almost where you're at. I'm, like, it's just, if somebody emails me and asks about commission, I'm probably going to say no.
Yep.
Unless I really like them, then I might do it. But, like,
yeah.
And it's, maybe that's, like...
No, it's fair. There are so many potters I've interviewed that want commissions that they can listen to this podcast, go find one of those potters, and get that commission done. Because there's a lot of people out there that want to do them. And I think it really just depends on your personality and, like, what you like to do. You know, I don't think anyone should have to take a commission. And, you know, there's plenty of people that like to take them, and there's plenty to go around. So we just send them to the people that want to do them.
Yeah.
I think we're coming up on our hour here. Did you have anything that you wanted to add or ask me or anything?
I will say that, like, so I've been doing pottery, like, full time for, like, a little over a year now.
Mm-hmm.
And while it seems like my business is succeeding, it's also quite difficult to make a lot of money making pottery, so I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
Kind of in a funny place right now where I'm kind of looking at, like, getting a day job again. And whether that means, like, something part-time, or so I still have, you know, 3 days a week I work, and then 4 days a week I can do pottery or whatever. Yeah, I think that would be ideal. It's a big thing. Like, I don't think a lot of the bonsai community realizes how difficult it is for anyone who's a bonsai potter to make a living doing it. Like, it's incredibly difficult. There's only, like, a handful of people that are even doing it full time. Like I think Sarah Reeder does it full time. But, like,
yeah. I think she might make other stuff too, though, not just the bonsai pots.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That could make sense, though. You know, going forward, I might not be producing as many pots as I have done, but what I would like to be doing is focusing on making more unique designs, like really putting a lot more time into, like, rectangles. I made a few rectangles in the last few months, but that's something I'd really like to, like, really hone in on and get really good at, is just making, like, really solid rectangles, which, like, those are pretty tricky in terms of, you know, we're talking about, like, walls warping earlier with ovals, but if you really want your wall to warp, make a, you know, 16-inch long rectangle.
And then wood fire it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. Kind of wanted to bring that up.
That makes sense. I've kind of found a groove with making mugs, but that's, you know, like, you on the side of, like, making the art pieces, the sculpture, you know, producing the content, we'll call it collectively, you know, then it's like there is a part-time job there of, like, whether I want to or not, I am going to make 50 mugs because, you know, that's the job, that's the bills, so.
Yeah, so you have that balance between, like, making that sort of tableware stuff.
Yeah, I did a show this weekend and it was all mugs. I didn't even take pots with me.
Oh, wow. Cool.
It was a big city show and I was like, they want mugs.
Well, I think mugs are such a popular thing too. Like, I feel like you could literally just make mugs and never have to make a bowl or you know what I mean?
No. There are so many potters that have careers entirely based on mugs. And like, I'm self-taught, and the doorway that I found myself through as a self-taught potter was through the doorway of a production potter who basically said, hey, we make mugs here. This is what people want. And I followed that path and then kind of went down my own road of like, okay, well, I want to make bonsai pots and be part of this community. But at the same time, I'm like, but the man was right. We do make mugs here. People like these. So, I mean, hey, you know, you could just start making mugs. Yeah, I've got BlueNoseTrading.com where I have all my stuff, and I have an Etsy, but you have to go to my website. I'm not going to share my Etsy. Etsy has to bring its own traffic.
What's your website?
Oh, it's BlueNoseTrading.com. Yeah, my business name is named after my dog. She's a Blue Nose Pit Bull, so it's Blue Nose Trading for all of our stuff.
I might need to get some mugs from you, so.
Anytime! I've got bonsai tree mugs up right now. They're hand-painted. I throw the mug, and then I have a bunch of colored slips that I made with basin stains, and I paint with trees with the slips onto the mugs. Like, I like to look at trees from, like, on Instagram, or just, like, looking at the photos from nationals, and I painted a few that, like, just impressionistic ones that I saw onto the mugs. So they're all individually different, and it's kind of fun.
Cool.
Yeah, and then there's just your basic mugs for your, you know, non-bonsai people, I guess, and...
Yeah, it's funny, actually, I had this idea to make, like, mugs that are, like, shaped like bonsai pots, right? Like doing, like, a hexagon-style bonsai pot with, like, little feet on the bottom.
Oh, that would be super cool.
But with, like, you know, handles, so it's just...
Yeah, and just a little bit taller. Or even, you know, the ones that they have, like, I don't know if it's a traditional, but they're kind of like this, sort of. For the cascades.
Yeah.
Like that would be a cool mug shape.
But it's funny, like, I had thought of that idea, and then, like, maybe, like, a year ago or something, I saw that now Tokutake.
Yeah, I've seen his work, for sure.
I saw that he made some bonsai pot mugs. I think they were more, like, I can't remember what shape they were exactly. They were maybe, like, sort of oval-ish, I can't remember. But I saw that and I was like, damn it. Like,
you could still do it. They'd still be different.
Yeah. I would like to try to do something like hexagon style ones. I think that'd be cool.
I see. We're going to have you coming out with your non-bond rectangle mug era here in 2024. That's exciting, though. It's exciting to be open to growth and change and ready to, you know, keep moving forward with things and being flexible and, you know, be like water, like Bruce Lee said.
Yeah, it's good advice there. For sure.
All right, so we're going to close up here. Where can everybody find you and all your stuff?
redtailpottery.com is my website. I'm not sure when this will be posted, but I still have a few pots that are for sale on there right now. You can find me on Instagram. It's at redtailpottery, but with underscores between each word. So red_tail_pottery. That's me on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page. Just look up Red Tail Pottery on Facebook. I'm not super active on Facebook, but you could probably get in touch with me there if you wanted to. And I think that's about it. I don't have any...
This will be out earlier on Patreon, probably sometime in November, so people who are on Patreon can listen to it and they'll be able to see what's going on pretty soon. And I think that it's going to come out publicly sometime next year, like late in the year. So if you're listening in the future when this actually releases on streaming services, you should definitely go check out his website because it could be a whole new world there.
We're recording this in October 2023, just for reference.
And it should probably come out, it'll be a long time before it comes out publicly. So, but it'll be evergreen, you'll still be around. Thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Blue Nose Trading, which is me and all my patrons. You can get early access to unreleased podcast episodes and YouTube videos by becoming a patron of my work at patreon.com/bluenosetrading. You can find all my current available ceramic work on my website, bluenosetrading.com. For social media links and information about today's artist, be sure to check out the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Remember that you have great ideas that are worth exploring, drink lots of water, and I will see y'all next time around.